Is the US going back to an all-gas construction scenario besides renewables?
I think the U.S. is going to rely very heavily on natural gas for incremental electricity supply, at least for the next 10 years and perhaps longer. As you said, the U.S. has canceled a lot of coal generating capacity. In fact, the last year and a half, the U.S. has canceled about 54% of the coal capacity ordered since the year 2000. Now, it doesn't mean that demand has fallen off and those plants somehow became unnecessary. The reality is that the U.S. is looking at changing its stance on climate change, and that has led to the cancellation of the coal plants. It's also in part led to the new interest in nuclear energy in the United States, but nuclear plants have a long lead time, the construction periods are long. So the U.S., even with the new interest in nuclear energy, won't see significant increases in nuclear electricity generation for at least 10 years. So over that period, I think the U.S. is going to rely principally on natural gas for baseload electricity supply. We're also going to develop a lot of wind capacity, but wind generation really is a different product. It doesn't substitute readily for coal.
Where does FERC think future gas supplies to then provide gas for this gas for Dash will come from?
Well, a lot of it will come domestically. The United States, unlike most other countries that are LNG importers, we have very significant domestic production, and U.S. gas production accounts for about 85% of total gas supply. So we're much more self-sufficient in natural gas than we are for oil, for example. Now, and then a lot of the net short will be accounted for by Canadian gas imports. But Canadian gas imports, which used to account for all of the shortfall in U.S. domestic gas production, the shortfall between domestic gas production and domestic demand, Canadian imports are falling off. Canadian imports by themselves are no longer adequate to meet our import needs. So we're turning towards LNG. And LNG right now is the fastest growing source of U.S. gas supply. And right now, the U.S. is in the Atlantic market, the Atlantic Basin LNG market. We will be in the Pacific market when the Sempra project opens on the Pacific coast. Sempra project is in Mexico, but it will feed in part the western United States gas market.
Let's now turn to the role of LNG in the U.S. gas market. Over the last 12 months, the U.S. gas market has been, in the LNG market, a low-cost, a low-price market. And therefore, to some extent, it has been a market where product was moving when other markets were not as interested as during the rest of the year in receiving product. As a result of this, we have seen very large fluctuations in LNG terminal use in the United States. Longer term, low average utilization of US LNG terminals also, seems, to be likely to happen. How will these market-based developments affect future allowable returns on US LNG terminal investments?
I think U.S. LNG projects probably will operate differently than projects in other countries because of the nature of the U.S. gas market. I would expect they'd operate very differently from Japanese LNG import projects. The U.S. gas market, though, it's not less attractive than the Asian or European markets. It's just fundamentally different. In the U.S., we have very significant domestic production in the United States, as I mentioned. We also have very large and developed gas storage capacity. So it allows the U.S. to buy and store natural gas, LNG, when other countries lack storage capacity. So we can be somewhat opportunistic in our LNG purchasing. We have a very developed gas pipeline network in the United States, really the most extensive network in the world. And we have very significant transparency, price transparency, that's, I think, better than both the European and the Asian markets, and vast liquidity. So another key consideration is seasonality. The value of natural gas in the United States varies very significantly from season to season. I think there probably is more volatility in the value of natural gas in the United States than perhaps the other markets. But that seasonality is captured in the way we price natural gas in the United States. So I think the combination of those things, it probably will result in a different operation of our LNG import projects.
How do you think the strong market forces, including competition, will influence future regulation of the U.S. LNG industry?
I think it influences the development of the U.S. LNG industry very significantly because The U.S. a number of years ago, 5 years ago, looked at LNG projects, and we previously used to regulate LNG projects as if they were pipelines. We viewed them as an aspect of transportation. So we imposed open access requirements on them just like we would a pipeline. But we concluded that that actually was retarding the development of LNG import projects in the United States. And so we changed our attitude towards LNG import projects. Now we really view them as equivalent to a gas well. They're a supply source, not a mode of transportation, but a source of supply. And that has resulted in a tenfold increase in LNG import capacity in the United States. There is a difference between import capacity and actual imports, though, and we're not predestined to win the competition. North America, the United States, we are competing with Europe and Asia for LNG imports, and I think we'll have success in that competition because we have some differences in our gas market, but I think we're as attractive as the Asian and the European gas markets.
With all this spare capacity in terminals, which we can see today, and which most likely also might continue in the future, do you view this as a valuable asset in relation to security of supply for the U.S. market, or is this seen in the U.S. more as a negative?
I think it's seen as a positive. In the U.S., there's when citing an LNG project, a new project, there are legitimate safety concerns by the public because from their point of view, it's a new and unaccustomed activity. There's actually been very little opposition in communities to expansions of LNG projects because it's an accustomed activity. But the public recognizes the need for natural gas, and I think even a lot of the environmental groups see natural gas as a favored fuel. And particularly as the U.S. is looking at change in climate change policy, they view natural gas as part of the solution.